There's an old Christian phrase: in essentials, unity; in non-essentials, liberty; in all things, charity, or love. That's great, but there seems to be no unity at all in the Christian faith today. Each denomination has their own articles of faith, and very few, if any of them, are identical. So which parts are essential and which are non-essential? What is the orthodox, meaning the right thinking, view of Christianity? Christian groups regularly go around proclaiming that only their interpretation is correct, in essence saying that every single thing they believe is essential, and anyone who believes differently than they do, they break union with them. We have obviously gotten to the point where unity among Christians is practically a joke, and love isn't doing so great either. In fact, this breaking of unity has accelerated over the centuries. Christian groups used to only split off every few hundred years, and now a new denomination springs up so frequently that I have given up trying to keep track of them all. There are many reasons for this, most of them very boring, so right up my alley, but let's start with one big reason. When people are faced with a host of problems, they rightly prioritize and go after the biggest problem first, then the next largest, and so on. Christian theology was built the same way. The initial arguments were over whether Jesus was God, what that meant, whether Jesus was human, what the Trinity meant, big picture things. But as those got resolved, we moved on to smaller and smaller issues, building a stack of beliefs one on top of each other. And at some point we crossed the line where we passed into minutia that wasn't essential and that we couldn't agree on, and splits began to happen, speeding up as the importance of the issues being debated decreased century by century. And if we look at the problem as Christian debates moving beyond the essentials which require unity, and into non-essentials that promote division, but that people still hold on to, then one way of finding what Orthodox Christianity means is to find the point at which Christianity began splitting apart, as that would be the change between arguing essential and non-essential beliefs. So what did Christians sorted out before we began splitting into pieces? And that is a surprisingly easy question to answer, because near the beginning of Christian history, there were 7 major councils held within the Roman Empire to settle the issue of what Christians believe. The Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic branches both accept the results of these 7 councils. The Roman Catholic branch actually accepts significantly more than these 7. The first 4 or 5 are widely accepted by most Protestants, and even the Church of the East accepts the results from the first 2. And thankfully, the Second Council actually arrived at a single declaration of what it meant to be Christian, which we call the Nicene Creed. Now, the original creed was put forth at the First Council and then revived and re-accepted in the second one. That means that this statement of faith has been accepted by every major branch of Christianity for all of Christian history since the creed was made. If there are essentials to Christianity which we can unite around, it is this creed. It is what for over 1,500 years has defined what is right thinking in Christian circles. And while we have fought quite a lot about things that exist outside of it, nothing outside of it can be considered essential for correct Christian belief and must be viewed as non-essential. So what topics does the creed cover as essential to good Christian belief? It says that there is one God, creator of all, and that Jesus is the only Son of God, eternal, part of God, and yet distinct, that he was incarnated by the Holy Spirit and Mary for our salvation, and was crucified, died, buried, rose again, and ascended to heaven. He will come again to judge and to reign. It says that the Holy Spirit is also part of the Trinity and speaks through people, and that church should be unified. That there is one baptism, there is an afterlife, and a resurrection. That's it. That is the sum total of requirements for Christian orthodoxy. And keep in mind that this creed isn't about what it takes to be a Christian. This creed is about what it takes to be a correct thinking Christian. And that's all that was required. I mean, that's it. The sum total of requirements for Christian orthodoxy. Beyond this council, the details kept getting more nitpicky, and essentials began to make way to non-essentials, and unity was lost. But while it's noteworthy what is in the Creed, let's take a minute and talk about what isn't in the Nicene Creed. It doesn't mention particular atonement theories or specific means of receiving salvation. It doesn't offer a statement on church government or the relationship of church and state. It doesn't say anything about the role of pastors or speaking in tongues or the rapture or how to pray or pretty much anything about the role or authority of the Bible, other than that Jesus was predicted by the scriptures. Nor is there anything about abortion or gay marriage, angels, demons, free will versus predestination. None of the things that tend to divide us today in the church are in there, which means none of them are essential to not just being a Christian, but to being a right-thinking Orthodox Christian. Yet every week I hear at least someone mention one of these issues as if they are essential to being a true Christian. No, they're not. But that isn't to say that we can't believe or disagree with some of them. We can absolutely believe something more specifically than the Creed. I certainly have more specific opinions than the Creed lays out about more subjects. But outside of the Nicene Creed, those beliefs that we have not been recognized as essential to our faith. And not holding the same non-essential details as us does not make someone else a bad Christian. And it certainly isn't a reason to break fellowship with them. Perhaps it is time to return to our essentials. Allow more liberty in the non-essentials without looking down on people for believing something differently than we do. And instead just focus on showing that love in everything. Well, thank you for watching this video on the essentials of Christian orthodoxy. I hope it was helpful. If you want to learn more about the role that Constantine the Great played in the early church, check out over here. And if you're interested in watching this series from the beginning, check out the link over here. Next week, unless I chicken out, will be a look at the history of church and state and how they've interacted over time. But as always, thank you for watching. Have a great week. See you next Friday.